I give the floor to the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic.
شكرا سيدي الرئيس.
Thank you, Mr. President. My delegation renews its full rejection of the draft resolution entitled Human Rights Situation in the Syrian Arab Republic in form and in content. Procedurally, we stress that the key co-sponsor of this draft resolution, namely the Saudi delegation, has no legal or ethical eligibility to co-sponsor a draft resolution that deals with human rights situation anywhere in the world. We confidently and sincerely believe that it is necessary for member states to reflect on the precarious situation that we are at now, especially when we see the representatives of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the most serious and violent religious dictatorship on the globe, are co-sponsoring draft resolutions on human rights situation in Syria. Syria, that has many years in terms of promotion and protection of human rights compared to Saudi Arabia. On the merits, my country, in principle, rejects the politicization of this item and the fact that some delegations resort to co-sponsoring draft resolutions targeting specific countries or states for pure political reasons that are known to everyone, especially that the substance of the draft resolution is imbalanced and it aims at distorting facts and tarnishing the image of my country and its legitimate institutions, and this reflects the position of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and its destructive policy towards my country. This is based on military and political investments in the Wahhabist extremist terrorism in order to spread anarchy, topple or oust the legitimate government, undermine the political process and negatively impact it. This is a violation of relevant Security Council resolutions that underscore that this political process is owned by Syrians exclusively without any foreign intervention. Consequently, the royal family ruling the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia at gunpoint, and it is evident in the case of Saudi Arabia. It is ruling this country by religion as well. And Islam has nothing to do with this. This royal family wants to use the surplus of oil revenues in exercising political pressure and financial attraction in this organization to take it to a way that would lead to the collapse of principles and well-established work rules, and would also undermine the credibility, sincerity, and the balance of the United Nations. In all clarity, the representatives of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia want you today to be accomplices and false witnesses on a draft resolution that calls for measures and well-established traditions there in Saudi Arabia, there in Syria. They have been there for decades and centuries. I mean here conducting elections, having a constitution and a parliament, giving a role to women, protection of journalists, and ensuring press freedom. This, at a time, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, since its establishment, knows no parliament, a constitution, or elections in the first place. It knows oppression of citizens, persecution of women, religious minorities, and expatriates. And recently, Saudi Arabia saw a new form of human rights, which is using its diplomatic offices in killing and dismembering a dissident Saudi journalist who opposed the royal family. This begs the first question. Where is Saudi Arabia from implementing these rightful demands as to their people who are languishing under the yoke of sheikdoms that knew nothing about parliaments or a constitution? And these sheikdoms are ashamed of women in their societies, as was the case in the pre-Islamic era, when the population of these sheikdoms used to bury baby girls alive because they were ashamed of them. Mr. President, we are not naive, and we know full well that the delegation of Saudi Arabia has always been a facet and a tool in the hands of those who support terrorism in my country, Syria. But those who pushed the Saudi delegation to co-sponsor or table this draft resolution is a hypocrite and a liar, because after they requested Saudi Arabia to be for 8 years a facet in targeting the stability and security in my country, Syria has requested Syria now to be its facet within the United Nations, to target Syria within the General Assembly through tabling a draft resolution on the human rights situation and democracy in Syria. We urge the majority of this organization not to engage in such farce, which history will prove that it is one of the setbacks of the United Nations. Why not? While we are witnessing the representatives of a state that beheads the people in its streets under the guise of provision, calling for democracy in a state of well-established tradition and a history of thousands of years, Syria. Talking about hypocrisy and lying, colleagues, many of the countries that co-sponsored this draft resolution, we single out here those governments that are members of the so-called global coalition, also partook in the most abominable crimes in Syria when they engaged in the illegitimate military operations under the leadership of the United States that destroyed a Raqqa city and killed thousands of its population. Their bodies are still buried under the rubble of this city until this moment. They also participated in destroying bridges, infrastructure, gas stations, energy plants, agricultural land, laboratories, properties in Saudi Arabia. They have also pillaged artifacts and Syrian cultural heritage. They have traded in it. This is under the guise of combating Daesh. Falsely, Mr. President. The adoption of this Saudi draft resolution will be a serious precedent that will be used in any member country when governments that have that exercise politicization and financial attraction, when they target those who oppose their policy, hegemony, and influence. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I call on you to be cautious as to the abnormal practices that some member states are using to politicize human rights mechanisms and to use them as pressure on some member states. The Syrian Arab Republic considers voting in favor of this draft resolution, considers it to be an act of aggression against Syria, and it will spare no efforts to exercise its sovereign national rights and to take all measures against the co-sponsors and those who vote in favor of it, so that they will be isolated from any contribution or role in the political process that is owned by Syrians exclusively. They will be also excluded from any efforts of reconstruction. We believe that there are governments that have to appease the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for political reasons or financial considerations. But these governments should give compliments to Saudi Arabia, either by being silent as to their record of human rights violations, or to give them compliments regarding cases or situations that are related to them, not at the expense of my country, Syria, the fate and free aspirations of my people. Again, we request a recorded vote on this draft resolution, and I urge member states to vote against this draft resolution. In closing, Mr. President, we congratulate Saudi Arabia and other Arab states that co-sponsored this draft resolution on accession by Israel to the list of co-sponsors. And this demonstrates the nature and motives of Saudi Arabia. And the Israeli-Saudi coalition exposes the nature of such a draft resolution. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic, and I thank the interpreters for their forbearance.